We've checked our trail cameras and we've checked them twice, and the bucks are being naughty and not very nice. We may have even gotten out into the stand already this year, and the bucks are just not showing up. So, what can we do to get these bucks in front of us?
Here, Bucky, 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 Bucky.
What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to the subscribers, and if you're new here, welcome to Hobby Harvest. My name is Ken. So today we're going to talk about 5 ways to attract bucks. And now these are things that you can do and establish on private land, but these are going to be things you're looking for on public land, so this will apply to everybody. So the first thing is thick cover. So what just happened here over the past couple of weeks, bow opener was just a few days ago here in Wisconsin, was first of all, those bucks went from velvet to being hard horned. So they can now go into thicker areas of the woods that they couldn't go to before because they would be worried about hitting their velvet on that. The second thing that happened is we had a ton of hunting seasons open. We had a lot of bird seasons open. We, of course, had bow season open. The woods got a level of pressure and in places that it had not seen all summer, and that made these bucks change where they were during the summer, and it pushed them to somewhere else. Well, where did it push them to? The thickest area of the woods. So if you have your own property, what you want to develop are these thicker areas of the woods, these bedding areas with browse, just areas with safe, secure food sources, but specifically these thicker areas of the woods. That's always where we see the deer. They're always in that thick back corner, pocket, whatever. This is where, number one, you are going to want to either look for bucks or what you want to establish on your property. You want to try to plant things like red osier dogwood if you have some wetter areas. The dogwood species like wet feet, but willows work too. Those are also going to need to be in wet areas, but even like tag alder up north, anything that puts a lot of stems close to the ground, because a deer, of course, doesn't really care what's up above them. They want to be able to look horizontally and have so many twigs in their way, especially this time of year heading into fall. So don't count all those leaves as thick cover. We need stem count close to the ground to hide these deer so they feel safe and secure. And of course, those young tender stems are a food source for them as well. So they're going to be looking for that as well. So number one, the way you're going to attract bucks is with thick cover, or you're just going to want to look for it and hunt it this time of year. Number two on the list is going to be fall focused food sources. So this is going to be food plots on private property, but it could also be corn piles, feeders, etc. If you are providing a food source that was not there all summer, they are going to find that now this time of year as the woods deteriorate, a lot of those other food sources, those summer food sources deteriorate. They're going to find your area and they're going to come to you. So this is how you're going to attract these deer this time of year. Of course, food plots would have had to been put in already on private, but these are ways that you attract these bucks this time of year. I do not ever recommend doing summer food sources or putting bait piles out in the summer or letting your feeders out in the summer, because what you establish then is a lot of does on your property, and we'll get into that later. But what you're essentially doing is filling up your property with deer, and it's mostly going to be does and fawns if you have year-round food sources. And then there's no room for those bucks to move in this time of year when they're looking for a new home because they got spooked out of wherever they were, or just because they're hard-horned and they can now use more of the woods now that they can move through the thicker parts of it. So you're definitely going to want fall focused food sources. And on public land, you could just be looking for an area that just dropped a ton of acorns. There are a ton of acorns in the woods right now. I guarantee you those deer are probably hitting that up right now. But acorns can be very non-predictable because before you know it, they could be eaten up and just gone, and then now that's not a food source anymore, and those deer are going to go have to find another food source, which is the advantage of having like a food plot on private. But even throwing a corn pile out, if it's an area that you can bait, that's a great way to get that secondary food source established for them now that they're looking for those fall focused food sources. And that's what's going to draw these bucks in now this time of year, because those summer food sources are deteriorated, they're gone, they're not relating to them anymore. So I already alluded to it, but number 3 is you do not want to be where there are a ton of does. If you have a ton of does on camera and no bucks, chances are the bucks aren't going to just move into that area overnight because it's probably already at capacity. the land can only support so many deer in an area at a time. And especially heading into fall, as that native habitat deteriorates, it actually can hold less deer. So it's not going to really be too attractive to have these deer, like these bucks, move into that area that's overwhelmed with does. So you actually want to have your property set up that it does not attract does during the summer months, so that when we go into the fall months, into the hunting season, there is vacancy on your property for does and bucks to move in at the same time, and you will have much better gender ratios on your property. So what you typically want to see is 50-50 on your cameras. Now this is bucks from sunup till sunup the next day. So we are counting midnight bucks in here on this ratio. And for your does, we're counting just your resident does here. So it can be a little tricky to figure out how many does you have. It is easier to count does, I've found, on food sources. So I really don't like putting cameras on food sources, but you can definitely get a good idea of how many does are overall on that food plot then. Get a good idea how many does and fawns are in your area. Compare that to how many bucks you have, and then you'll kind of get a good idea if you're near that 50% mark or not. If you're seeing just nothing but does even after we're heading into the fall season now, but you were seeing does all summer too, it probably means you have too many summer food sources. You really want to cut down on those. There's this misconception, and I believed it 2 years and years ago, that if you had deer feeding on your property all season long, then that was just their home and that's just where they were going to live, and you had them established there. That's not at all what happens in the deer woods. They shift to their fall habitat around the beginning to middle of September. And if you were feeding them all summer, all you were doing was bringing all the does and fawns in, and now you're probably not going to see any bucks in that area because they have already gone and moved on to what is now the good habitat in the woods, because you, thankfully for them, pulled all the does out of that habitat all summer long. So you definitely want to have that other habitat, not the summer habitat, and that's what's really going to help to attract these bucks to your property this time of year. So the fourth thing I want to talk about is the pressure in the woods. I kind of talked about this at the beginning of the video, but I was just checking my cell cams right before I started making this video, and my cameras have absolutely blown up. So like I said, bow opener was here in Wisconsin a couple days ago. I have not hunted my property yet. I let it rest because of this reason. What happened was everybody else got out. They had to hunt opening day. They put all that pressure into the woods, and all of the deer came running to my property. That's why my cameras are absolutely blowing up right now. Now I have to pick very good days to go in there. So once you've attracted the deer by not putting pressure on your property, you do not want to mess that up. So when I hunt that, it is only going to be when the wind is absolutely perfect. And I'm not talking when it's perfect on stand. It's when it's perfect on my walk in too. I don't want to be painting my scent out into a bedding area or whatever if I'm hunting like a PM hunt, because that's where the deer are going to be. So I am absolutely careful of where my scent is blowing on the walk in, on the walk out, and on the sit, especially after I did such a great job of pulling all of those deer into the property. So we want to be very specific on the days we hunt. We want to hunt those good weather days. We want to hunt those good wind days. We don't want to screw it up by hunting just because we got to get out and hunt, or just because it's Saturday and I'm off on Saturday, or whatever it is. Like, once we've done this, be very, very careful. And also, if you're doing this on private land, be so careful with this that you set up where your stand locations are, where your ingress and egress are, and also clear out that ingress and egress. There shouldn't be a single twig that you step on. You should just get in the habit of, every time you walk down your trails, of throwing every little branch and twig and rock and whatever out of the way. Make sure they're cleared out, that there's no like briar or something's going to scrape against your pant leg as you walk in. Of course, the hunting gear, make sure you got the boots, and make sure you're taking care of your scent that way as well. But be so quiet, so still going in. Don't be in a rush to get in there. Deer see movement in the woods before they hear and smell you most times. Just like you do. When you're sitting on stand and there's a deer walking in, the first thing you usually catch is a glimpse of movement, and then you look and then you say, yep, that's a deer. Then maybe you hear them. Now, of course, yeah, if they're sneaking up behind you, you might hear them, but For most of the time that deer see you or you see things in the woods, you see movement first, it draws your attention, and then you focus on it, and then that's when a deer is going to bust you because you most likely didn't see it. They're way better at this game than you are. So just make sure you're really good with making sure you're not overpressuring your property and acting like a complete ghost when you're going in and coming out so they don't even know you were there. Now, number 5 is something that I talk a lot about in other videos when we're trying to like design a property, and that is cutting down on sight lines. So when you're hunting, even if you're going in on public land or this is private land and you kind of have more control over this, you want to make sure that these sight lines are cut down on. So just like I was saying, where deer look for movement in the woods, well, what if you walk in where they can't see you moving? What if you walk in down in a low spot that has a lot of cover, or maybe there's at least cover up on like ridge lines or whatever that they can't see you down there? You want to make sure either use topography, use plantings, whatever you can do to make sure that you're not just projecting your presence off into the woods around you. So when you're walking in, if you can really make sure that nothing within 20, 30, 40, 50 yards can even see you because you've cut down on these sight lines, that is amazing. And a planting that is very good at doing this is going to be your conifers, because conifers are not good for bedding. They're not good for food for deer. They're not a great habitat tree in general, other than for cutting down on sight lines. So if you're trying to really hide the way that you get into your stand, get out of your stand, maybe even hide your stand itself, conifers are an excellent thing to plant for that. We've been planting little sapling pine trees around our stands on my northwestern Wisconsin property for years. We put a new stand up, we find some saplings in the woods, and we plant them under the stand. They grow up, they completely hide the stand. And if they get to a height eventually, because they do grow fast, you just kind of snip them off and clip them off to keep like your window open or the way you want to be able to see. But then you let them grow where you want to be hidden from. And you can get in and out of these stand and these blind locations completely undetected. I have an old blind location on my northwestern Wisconsin property, but we moved it recently. And what we did is we have a food plot, so it's kind of overlooks part of a food plot, but it's in the corner of the property. But what it does is you come off the road and you dive down deep into this valley, and then you come up on the backside of that ridge and you get to the bottom of this box blind, and you climb the ladder, and you can't even see that food plot or the surrounding area until you get up in the box. Because what that means is the deer that are on that food plot, the deer that are bedded off the edge of that food plot, can't see you until your eyes peek just the top of that plywood at the top of that box blind. And if you are slow and still and quiet in this whole process, that's not going to be enough movement for them to catch you, and you're going to actually be sitting in the blind without ever being detected by a deer that's maybe only 50 yards away from you. And then of course you're set up to hunt over that food source for a PM hunt. So it's like, this is what you're looking to create, but this is also what you're looking to find naturally occurring if you're a public land hunter, is just always think, if I can see them, they can see me. You don't want to walk in where you can see hundreds of yards in every direction, because then everything within hundreds of yards can see you, and you essentially wiped out that entire part of the woods. There's not going to be anything in that area until you clear the area and they have a chance to fill in behind you. So that's not something you really want to do. You would rather sneak into the woods, sneak out of the woods, be a ghost, like I said, and you're going to see success this season. If you guys feel like you got some value out of this video, like, subscribe, do all of that stuff. But if you did really like this video, YouTube thinks you're going to like this one. Otherwise, go check out this one. That one should be pretty decent for you too. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.